Hi guys, welcome to the 10.2 relative frequency video. Alright, so in this video you're going to learn about relative frequency, joint relative frequency, marginal relative frequency, and conditional relative frequency. So relative is the frequency of the category divided by the total of all the frequencies. Joint relative frequency is found by dividing a frequency that is not a total by the grand total. Marginal relative frequency is found by dividing a row total or column total by the grand total. And conditional relative frequency is found by dividing a frequency that is not in the total row or the total column by the total for that row or column. So it's within the graph itself and you divide it by either the row or the grand total. All right, so when you're looking at a two-way frequency table, you can see there's two separate categories. There's the joint frequencies, which actually deals with the left column and the rows. So I mean the left rows and the columns on the top. So you can see that like for the number of people that pick boys and that are boys that pick Spanish are 10, and the number of boys that pick French are 2, and so on. So that's the joint frequency because it's joined between the category and the type of person or thing that chose it. And then the marginal frequencies are just that. They're on the margin. So they're on the outside, and the frequencies just stand for the totals. So for the bottom, under Spanish, they just add 10 and 15 and get 25, and French is 2 plus 12 and get 14. And then on the far right-hand side, you have the grand totals, which is the total of the entire row all the way across would equal 20. The entire row all the way across would equal 30. And then that bottom right-hand corner is going to be the grand total, which is 50. So everyone they're talking about, including boys and girls, and all three languages, would total 50 students. So that's how you would read that. Marginal is on the outside, joint is on the inside, and that bottom right-hand corner is the grand total. All right, so analyzing results to determine the preference. So step 1, you want to identify the percent of all the people surveyed who are girls. Step 2, determine each conditional relative frequency. Step 3, interpret the results by comparing each conditional relative frequency to the percent of all the people surveyed who are girls, and then repeat for boys. So if you were doing for the girls category, it would be 15 out of 25. So you would do 15 divided by 25 and get that percentage, and then do 12 out of 14 and get that percentage, 3 out of 11 and get that percentage, and then you would want to go across and do 15 out of 30 would be for girls that pick Spanish would be 50%, and then 12 out of 30 and then 3 out of 30. And you have to interpret the results, and then you would repeat the same thing for the boys, and that's all you do. So you just go column and then by row and do each category. So this is boys against girls. And then you would compare the results and say, like, you know, the number of girls that picked Spanish is 50% out of the total girls, but 15 out of 50 is how much percent. So that's a different category. So you have to do all of the percentages. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in the problems. All right, so for this one, it wants us to make a two-way frequency table using percent and interpret the joint and marginal frequencies. So you first want to set up the categories and your side categories. So we have the type of car, and then we have gender. So those are the two categories that we are talking about. That's a two-way frequency table. So we're talking about the gender and the type of car they choose. So we either have a sedan, a truck, or an SUV. And then the total is the far right-hand column. And then we have male and female. And then we're also going to have a total under that for each category or each type of car they choose. So you look on the right-hand side and you're just going to count how many chose sedan, which is 2, and how many chose truck for male, which is 4, how many chose SUV for male, which is 3, and then you add those up. 2, 4, 3 would equal 9. Do the same thing for female, which is 5 pick sedan, 1 pick truck, and 5 pick SUV. Add 5, 1, and 5 together and get 11. Then you're going to add the columns going down. 2 plus 5 is 7, 4 plus 1 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8, and 9 plus 11 is 20. So now that we have that, the second part is to make sure it's in percentages. So you're going to divide 2 by 20, because that's how many total, and you get 10%. You divide 5 by 20, or I'm sorry, they're going that way. Okay, so 2 by 20 gets 10%, 4 by 20 gives you 20%, 3 by 20 gives you 15%, and then 9 by 20 gives you 45%. So then underneath for female, 5 divided by 20 will give you 25, and then you get 5%, 25%, and that adds to be 55%. And then going down, you'll get 35%, 25%, 40%, and the last right-hand column needs to add to be 100% because everything is out of 100%. So 45 plus 55 does equal 100%, so then we know we're right. So we have to interpret the joint and marginal frequencies. So looking at this data, you can see that SUVs was the most popular as far as 40% people picking SUV, but from the female and male category, it was tied between 25% picking sedan and SUV for female, but the highest category for the male was the truck with 20%. You could also say that more people who were female voted for the type of car compared to the number of males were in this category. So there was more females voting, which could have swayed the vote a little bit, but just looking at this two-way frequency table, that's what we can see. All right, so for this part, we have to use the given information to answer the following questions below. I see that the questions are misnumbered, but we're just going to go from the top left and work our way down. So it says, what percentage of drivers are female given that they drive a truck? So you look at the female category and they drive a truck, so that would be 1/5, and 1 divided by 5 is 20%. And then what percentage of drivers drive a sedan given they are male? So you look at the sedan, then go to male, and that would be 2/9. And the reason why it's 2/9 and not 2/7 is that they're talking about all of the males. So all the way across, 2 divided by 9 would be 22.2%. And then what percent of drivers drive an SUV given they are female? So that again is going all the way across. Given they are female means the entire category. So for SUV, that would be 5 out of 11, or 45.5%. And what percent of drivers are male given they drive a truck? So that's 4 out of 5 because there's 4 chosen for truck and male, and that's out of 5 for the category. So when it says given they are, you have to go to the entire column of that. So it's because it's given a truck, we go to the column where there's 5. When it says given they are female, we would go all to the right, which is 11. And given they are male, would go all to the right, which is 9. And then given they are a truck, we use all the way down, which is 5. So 4 out of 5 is 80%. All right, so for this part, it says the two-way frequency table below represents the results of a survey about men, women, and televised sports. Complete the table. So we have gender, yes and no, if they like to watch televised sports, and then gender is men and women, and then they're choosing yes or no, and we've got our marginal frequencies with the totals on the outsides. So for men, what I like to do is to actually go to the category that gives us answers. So 48, if it's out of 73, so we just subtract 48 from that, and you would get the ones that chose no, which is 25. So we put 25 right there. So when we add 25 plus 9, does that equal 34? And it sure does, so we know we have the right answer. So now we can also do 48 plus 43, which is 91, and 91 plus 34 does equal 125. And then you can go 2 different ways. You could either do 43 plus 9, or you could do 125 minus 73. Either way will get you the answer. So 43 plus 9 is 52, and so our table is complete. And now you're going to go on to number 2, which is finding the joint relative frequency of the men surveyed who liked televised sports. All right, so doing that, the ones that like televised sports, you're going to do 48 out of 125 because that's the total. We're not doing the total with men, we're doing the total out of the entire survey. And then you actually figure out what 48 divided by 125 is, and that's 0.384, and then you multiply it by 100 to get back the 38.4%. Find the marginal relative frequency of people surveyed who like televised sports. So that's 91 out of 125, because that's the yes category. And then you divide that and multiply it by 100, and you get 72.8. All right, so for number 4, it says, given someone is male, is that person more or less likely to like televised sports? So because it's more likely, because 48 out of 73, or 66%, chose yes, versus only 34% chose no. All right, so for number 5, given someone likes televised sports, is that person more or less likely to be male? Explain your response. So if there's 91 that's liking televised sports, out of that category, 48 are male and 43 are women. So it's more likely to be male because there's a 53% chance versus only 47% chance with women.
Do you have tape?
Go Seahawks.